Hey guys, welcome to the first lesson in your purple packet. Today we're going to be covering the linear parent function. So before we get started, we're going to figure out what the linear parent function is. So the linear parent function is the simplest form of a linear function. And the way you know you have the linear parent function is when your x and y values are the same or they match. And you'll see what I mean in a few minutes. So you might see the linear parent function written a couple of different ways. So the first way is f of x equals x, because f of x is the same thing as y, and we just said that the x and y values are the same or they have to match. So here, if the x and y values have to match, y has to be the same or equal x. So let's look at what that looks like on a table. So we have a couple of tables. The only difference between the two tables is that this one says f of x and this one says y. So we just wrote up in that top box that the x and y values have to match. So we're going to look at one table first. This is what I mean by match. X and y have to be the same thing. So if x is 0, y is 0. This one also matches. X is 1, y is 1. X is 2, y is 2. X is 3, y is 3. Well, what's missing in my table? Well, if we continue the same pattern, x and y have to be the same, so the next x value would be 4. So the y value also has to be 4. And then the next x value would be 5, which also makes the y value 5. This is the exact same thing. The only difference is I have y instead of f of x. So I could use the same numbers, 4 and 4, 5 and 5. So this is what the parent function looks like in a table, either one of these. This is the linear parent function in graph form. So this is the line for the equation y equals x. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to point out about this graph. First of all, that is my y-intercept. When you have the parent function, the y-intercept will always be 0. That's my b value, will be 0. Now, I can find the slope of this graph by doing rise over run. Well, this is the only point that I have so far. So this is another point on the line. Well, to get to that point, I have to go up 1, right 1. And then if I continue that pattern, up 1, right 1. That point would also be on the line. So the slope, or m, is always 1. So that, when you have a graph, that is how you check to see whether it is the parent function or not. If you have a slope of 1, meaning you go up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1, and your y-intercept is at 0, then you have a graph of the parent function. All right, so now let's look at a couple of examples. So remember, when we have a table, the x and y values have to match. So I'm going to look at each ordered pair this way. 5 and 5 are the same. So yes, they match. 17 and 17 are the same. 24 and 24 match. 37 and 37 match. Even though this doesn't start with 0, 0 like these examples up here did, this is still the parent function because each ordered pair that I look at has the same x and y value. So yes, we have the parent function because the x and y values in each ordered pair match. But remember, the ordered pairs go this way. So if I think of these as ordered pairs, the x and y is the same for each of them. So example 2, 0, 0, yes, it matches. 1 and negative 7 are not the same. So it doesn't really matter what the rest of my table looks like. As long as I have one ordered pair or one set of numbers that doesn't match, I no longer have the parent function. So if I look at the other two also don't match. So no, this is not the parent function. And we have to explain. No, because the x and y values do not all match. The first x and y value matches, but then the rest of them don't. All right, next example. Example number 3. Well, this time we have a graph. So remember the two things we said we have to have in order to say that the graph is the parent function. The first thing is my y-intercept needs to be at 0, which this one is, and then the slope has to be 1. So this y-intercept, or b, is 0. But now I have to find the slope of this graph. Well, this is a perfect pair. This is a perfect point. Sorry. Those are perfect points. Well, to get to those points starting here, I go down 1, right 1. Down 1, right 1. Down 1, right 1. Well, if I am going down 1, right 1, that means my slope is negative 1. In our definition, we said the slope has to be positive 1. So this is not the parent function. No, because the slope is negative. If we look at the graph of the parent function, that is a positive slope. This slope is negative, so it is not the parent function. It has a y-intercept of 0, but the slope is wrong. Example 4, this time we have an equation. Well, in the equation, I can find my slope. The slope is always in front of x. So if I look in front of x, that's my slope. Well, this means my slope is 2. Well, we just set up here that the slope has to be 1 in order to have the parent function. So this is also not the parent function, because the slope is not 1. In this function or equation, my slope is 2. And in the parent function, the slope has to be 1. So the last few examples, do not overthink these. For the parent function, f of x equals x, or y equals x, right? The x and y values have to match. I want you to notice that when it's in function notation, these two things match. What is inside the parentheses is also on the other side of the equal sign. So we're going to use that logic or thinking to help us answer 5 through 7. Well, inside of the parentheses I have 0, so it also has to equal 0, because the x and y values have to match. Well, if I have 12 inside, I write 12 here, because x and y have to match, which makes this 50. Now, 8 through 10 are a little different. This time they tell me f of x equals 10. Well, f of x is the same thing as y. So this is the same thing as saying y equals 10. Well, we know that y has to equal x. So if y is 10, x has to be 10. This tells me y is 200, so x has to be 200. And this one, h, is negative 40, so x is negative 40. Now you have, how many practice problems? 10 practice problems. When you are saying yes or no to these 3, you need to make sure that you explain why or why not. Don't just write yes or no, because your teacher's not going to give you credit for that. Good luck.